Warning: the following video contains material that may be harmful or disturbing to some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. During our marriage, my husband and I moved 4 times, and until we headed south a year ago, our first 3 homes were all located within the same Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania zip code. Now, if you ask locals what the suburban town of Brentwood is known for, they might mention the high school or the cute little ice cream shop. However, they will most assuredly tell you about the 4th of July firecracker run. It's a Brentwood tradition. But if you ask the folks who love all things scary like me, you're more likely to hear the story of the Demon House of Brownsville Road. Ironically, when we lived in Brentwood just a half mile from the infamous house, we could never have imagined the horrors taking place beyond the stout walls. You see, Pittsburghers are a pretty hardy stock. Those with deep family roots tend to stay in the area or move back if they've relocated somewhere along the way. They drink Iron City beer, they rarely take a sick day, and even if most precede the Sunday Steeler game with church, your average Pittsburgher won't generally have an exorcist on speed dial. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll just tell you here that most of the events we're going to discuss occurred in the Brentwood house between 1988 and 2006. So, getting back to the house. The stately brick house located at 3406 Brownsville Road was built sometime around 1910. A few different families called the place home over the years, and somewhere around 1970, a Pittsburgh kid named Bob Cranmer dreamed of owning the elegant old mansion. He had ambitions of working in politics, and following a successful tour as an officer in the Army, Bob embarked on his political career. In 1988, he and wife Lisa were house hunting. They needed a home large enough to accommodate their 4 children, all under the age of 5. Bob recalled the sprawling South Pittsburgh home he'd always dreamed of owning. But what were the odds that it would ever be on the market? After all, who would give up a house like that? You guessed it, 3406 Brownsville was up for sale. The Cranmers raced to give it a look. Bob had always wondered about the rooms, the history. Now he had his chance. Upon entering the house, he was not disappointed. The craftsman-style architecture was unusual for the neighborhood. The woodwork and built-ins were amazing. Lisa, on the other hand, was a little underwhelmed and got a creepy sort of vibe. But eventually her husband's enthusiasm wore her down, and she toured each room with an open mind. And that was soon put to the test. When they reached the landing at the top of the ornate staircase, they spied something a little odd. The door to the blue room, now closed, boasted a brass door knocker. It was on the outside of the bedroom door, just as you might find on the outside of the home. It was installed at eye level. The Cranmers tossed a wary look at the seller, who said nothing. They chalked it up to some sort of family custom, politely rapped on the door with the knocker, and stepped inside. The room was painted a Cape Cod blue, the perfect bedroom for their son Bobby. This was the house. Trying to appear blasé and not too eager, Bob made a lowball offer. He factored in about $30,000 in wiggle room, but to the Cranmers' surprise, the original low offer was accepted. Now, instead of internally celebrating his good fortune, Bob was overcome with a flash of, disquiet. Sitting with the current owner in the living room, he asked if there was something wrong with the property. Why would anyone want to sell his dream house? The seller assured him there was nothing wrong. In fact, they had hosted 3 Catholic masses right there in the living room. Alrighty then, church in the living room. That's different, but every family has their little customs. So the Cranmers moved in. Bob worked at his job in telecom, aligning himself for a big political future. So far, things were going according to plan. Within the month, however, everyone started to experience odd happenings. They seemed more quirky than scary at first. While planning out in the lush yard, Bob uncovered a box of what a practicing Catholic might call sacramentals, crosses, rosaries, medals, that type of thing. Now, the Cranmers were not Catholic at that time, so they called the previous owner, asked if he wanted them back. He said no. Asked what they were doing there. He said, "Doesn't matter, just put them back where you found them." Again, Bob thought it was another eccentricity, but he did as instructed and reburied the box. Other goofy things were taking place too. Bob would come home from work to hang his coat in the hall closet, which, unlike the rest of the home's attention to detail, merely boasted a naked 60-watt light bulb and a pull chain. Every time he fumbled for the chain in the dark, it would be wrapped completely around the bulb, as if magnetized or glued down. It didn't make sense. To Bob, or to me. I sucked at science, but even I would need some sort of explanation for that one. The chain was not glued, it wasn't magnetic, and there was no static electricity. Again, weird. Okay, let me stop here for just a second. You know how sometimes you see or read something scary and it sticks with you? I recall the image of this pull chain wrapped around the light bulb, and every time I open the closet door to our guest room, I think of that as I pull on the chain to turn on the light. After sharing this story, I'm pretty sure that ambivalence about opening the door is not going to go away. Sorry, back to the story. When Lisa reminded her husband that he was the only one using that closet, he stopped complaining about it. His wife, meantime, discovered some oddities of her own. While updating the foyer one morning, she uncovered the sheetrock beneath the old wallpaper covered in a black, cryptic scrawl. Written below the wallpaper were messages that read, "This is my house, our home," that kind of thing. Over and over, kind of like Jack's typed pages in The Shining. Starting to get less quirky now. As time wore on, more strange events took place in the house. But Bob didn't have time to worry about it. He was elected to Brentwood Council. Then, in 1995, he was elected Allegheny County Commissioner. He was a busy guy with no time for spirits, with a puckish sense of fun. As Bobby approached the teen years, he became sullen and withdrawn. As his mother tried to extract what was troubling him, he acted out and showed signs of aggression and violence. He had always experienced bad dreams, night terrors, and saw shadowy figures in the blue room. Now Lisa was convinced that his mental state was slipping. So she moved him out, and she and Bob moved into the pretty blue room with a handy knocker on the door. Bobby thrived in his new bedroom, and his spirits quickly improved. Lisa, however, fell apart. She gradually slid into a depressive funk, and she became lethargic and unmotivated. Bob Sr. was busy being a man of the people. His career was flourishing, so he didn't immediately notice the differences in his wife. In short order, though, he became concerned. He found hidden stacks of overdue bills and messes all over the house. But like their son Bobby, Lisa couldn't explain what was wrong. Soon, as always happens in these stories, the house started to get to him. The goofy light bulb thing was still happening, and the paranormal activity in the old house really began to ramp up. Lisa would constantly find puddles of foul-smelling goo on the carpet, with no logical explanation as to what it was or how it got there. As you see in so many scary movies, the walls would bleed, dripping from the ceiling to the floor. Furniture would move. Religious relics like crosses and rosaries would mysteriously turn up broken. Then, whatever evil thing was in their house got bold. Bob would wake in the night with 3 claw marks down his chest. He was terrified when he saw a dark, ominous figure in the basement. It was clear to him it wasn't a prowler. It wasn't human. The evil could manifest in a physical realm. The final straw was when the entity terrorized their young grandson. That was it. There was no more ignoring, no more denying. The family needed professional help. Bob phoned his friend Tom, then mayor of the city of Pittsburgh. Bob was not in the habit of telling wild stories of spirits or entities sharing his cozy suburban home. But Tom listened and directed him to a local priest, Reverend Ron Langwin, with the Pittsburgh Catholic Diocese. He spoke to Bob on the phone, but rather than listen, the priest described to Bob details of the home's layout. He described the stairs and the door on the left at the top of the hall. A malevolent spirit, or a demon, was attached to the house, the priest explained. Its goal was to break each resident in the home, to break down their spirit, their will, their faith. Langwin knew the demon by its name. However, since I don't wish to say that name out loud, I'm just going to tell you you can find it in the Hebrew Bible, in Leviticus. The demon was worshipped by the Canaanites, and they offered up babies as human sacrifice as a sign of their devotion. Reverend Langwin went on to explain that this demonic spirit infested a dead space somewhere in the house. It was like a portal, but it was not accessed by the family. It was in the center of the home, and it needed to be cleansed. The closet. Bob knew it had to be behind the closet. He demolished the rear wall, exposing a cold, musty area that had been sealed off more than 100 years before. Once Reverend Langwin was assured the Cranmers did not intend to move out, he committed to help the desperate family to take back their home. He told them it would take time, at least a year of concentrated effort, to rid the house of evil. But the terrifying activity continued. Bob hired a researcher to trace the history of his Brentwood house, and he learned a lot. A pediatrician named Dr. Mahone lived and worked out of the mansion in the early part of the 20th century. But he was not a traditional baby doctor. He performed illegal abortions down in the basement. Lisa recalled the mysterious, smelly puddles and the horror of seeing bloody scalpels and forceps in the basement utility sink. The sight of the blood-stained instruments sent her racing hysterically up the concrete stairs, certain that all were associated with the diabolical Dr. Mahone and his deadly operations. Lisa and Bob had also wondered about the basement fireplace, so unusual for a cellar of a residence. Like the oversized sink, this too had a sinister purpose. There, the abortionist disposed of the unborn babies in an unholy alliance to the demon. This was all too much. An exorcist from New York was finally called in to help rid the home of the demonic spirit. Upon seeing him, though, Lisa was dubious to say the least. She described the priest as aging and frail. Surely this slight man was not prepared to do battle with the evil that had nearly consumed their home. But he proved up to the challenge. According to Cranmer, they fought the demon as a team for the next 2 years. The family armed itself with various protections, from holy water to daily masses up to 3 times a day. The church worked with the Cranmer family to rid the home of the demon. In time, they were successful. The evil went out not with a bang, but with a whimper. According to Bob Cranmer, they basically wore it down and drove it out. Now let me just say that it sounds a little crazy to me when I read interviews with the Cranmer principals, and I assure you I mean no disrespect. They are completely believable, rational-sounding people, just like nearly everyone else I know in Pittsburgh. And I'm sure they've had to tell their story dozens of times over the years. From the time the house was deemed cleansed in 2006, there has been a good deal of media coverage. In 2014, Bob co-wrote a book on the subject called Demon of Brownsville Road. There has been some talk of a movie in the works. Bob and Lisa seem so calm and almost unfazed in a way. But I guess that's their faith. Bob Sr., at least, is now both a practicing Catholic and himself an exorcist. As for the 4 Cranmer children, they are now grown and out on their own. But I will concede they don't sound like they left the family home without trauma. Bobby Jr. especially seems to still bear scars from his experience in the demon house. And what of the house now, you ask? Several years ago, the infamous demon house became Brownsville Roadhouse Bed and Breakfast. I wasn't sure how the B&B had fared during the rough economy of 2020, but it looks like it's doing pretty well. I visited their website, which is worth a look-see. The photos of the grand home certainly make me want to book a reservation, and others seem to agree based on the 5-star reviews. The website does hint at the home's creepy history, stating that, quote, "Those who are visiting the manor to experience it because of the book are encouraged and welcome, although ghost hunting, paranormal, or spiritual activities are strictly prohibited." That sounds like a very good idea to me. So guys, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this story and are looking forward to Halloween. This is my very favorite time of year, so I am inspired to scare up lots more true crime cases and real-life mysteries. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll give it a thumbs up, and please consider subscribing. I generally upload 2 Scary Clary videos each week. Until next time, be well. Scary Clary out.